round 3 with this video, and I'm totally off track. What am I going to talk about here? Shit. Well, it's much easier trying to get it done on video 3 times. Okay. Well, I got to get that the Democrats are stealing the election. They're trying to steal the election, and they all know this. The Democrats they all know that they're trying to steal the election out of like certain cities in Democrat-run cities. They don't care because it benefits them, and just like anything else that benefits the Democrats in the moment, they're for it in the moment, right? But you can't really pretend anymore, if you're a Democrat, that the party is at all on the up and up. I see Democrat signs that are still up for Democrat politicians, some of them that lost, that are still up, and I'm thinking to myself, well, there's someone who can't be trusted. I mean, I believe that the Democrats in this machine, the last, what was it, 12 years, the 8 years under Obama, when the Democrats stopped engaging and talking with their political opponents, who they see as like mortal enemies in war, okay? They stopped talking at all. They stopped treating anybody else, they stopped treating them with any respect, with any dignity. They dehumanized them all, okay? And so they disengaged, and they would go into secret deals in secret rooms where they wouldn't let the press in, they wouldn't let anybody in. It was only the people who were in on their con that they'd let in. And they'd make like $1 billion energy deals that went kaput, and there was no power plant, or a power plant that didn't work, and the people that did the deal took the money and ran, got away scot-free under Obama. Things like that, forcing things on the American people. Like coming up with the temporary asset relief program, the mortgage lending crisis, to where the Democrats say that, they said everybody gets to have a house. All the disenfranchised poor people, with all the minorities, and everybody gets to have a house. And they instructed the banks, the big banks, to make loans to low-income people, big loans to low-income people that didn't make enough money to be able to pay the loan back. Okay, so that's on the bank, right? Like if I go to you and I see that you're a homeless person with no job, okay, and I say, I'm going to loan you $5,000. I'll give you $5,000 right now. I'll give you $10,000 right now, just as long as you promise to pay me back. Whose fault is it when that money doesn't get paid back? Well, according to Obama and Biden, it's the person who borrowed the money, not the lender. But really, it's the lender's fault. The lender should have known through going through the finances with the people, that the people wouldn't be able to pay the loan back, and they'd default on the loan, and the bank would probably repossess the house. So the bank would then get the house. Well, then Obama turned around and said, yeah, well, we're also going to take taxpayer money from everybody to the tune of like $3 trillion, and we're going to pay back the loans that the bad bank made. And it's like, no, that's not how you do that. No, you let the banks take the hit. To the point where, and all that was a tool to stab at the United States with communism. Because if you remember, GM was making big gas-guzzling cars around that time. And they were pretty much bankrupt because nobody was buying their cars compared to like Korean and Japanese cars that were smaller, more fuel efficient, better economy, stuff like that. They worked better, so people started buying them, and GM went bankrupt. Uh, and then Obama came out with they're too big to fail. No, they're not. No, they continued to make big gas guzzling SUVs in the face of uh, bad sales when compared to not gas guzzling cars, not big, huge, and they refused to change, and that's why they went bankrupt. And just like the banks deserved to take the hit financially, so did GM deserve to take that hit financially. They would have filed bankruptcy, they would have retooled, okay? They probably wouldn't have went away. Would have filed bankruptcy, would have retooled, and would have came back better and stronger. Instead of rewarding them for their irresponsible, business practices. That was the beginning. I remember that. So, we just need $3 trillion. Well, then it ended up being like, how much money did Obama put in it? $20 trillion, something like that. Took all the money, and that, with all the deals, all the backroom deals, dehumanizing their, human being, their fellow countrymen, supposedly, they had cooked up the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal that Clinton was going to usher in, which was going to do away with what's called sovereignty, national sovereignty. The nation state is allowed within its borders to write its own laws and have its own set of laws, right? Yeah, it is. Unless you're a progressive Democrat or a Democrat at all, and then the law is just something that's been getting in your way this whole time. And what the Democrats wanted was a corporate law to come in. Now, a corporate law is really just corporate policy. A corporation can change their policy on a whim if they want to, right? That's their right. So Clinton was going to usher in huge international corporations to set corporate law to undo all the legal precedent, all the legal system that's been established in this country. Undo that so that they could change it in a moment's notice, in the moment, wherever and whenever they needed for them to be able to get what they wanted. And essentially they would enslave everybody, kind of like, what the communists do. Doesn't matter if they're wrong, because they're going to use their authority to, prove they're right. And you end up being enslaved by that kind of a system. So that didn't happen, though, and thank God. Thank God that Donald Trump came along and pulled the mask off the Democrats, because the Democrats hadn't fooled me, but they had fooled the vast majority of people, it seemed like, into thinking that they were still all right, like they were still good folks, even though with the backroom deals and all this and screwing everybody, and you have to have my health care, and can't say no, bake my cake, the Donald Trump really came out and said, there's corruption, and I'm going to fight it. And he got elected in a landslide. And that, the mask fell off the Democrats because they flipped out. They went total Nazi. The Democrats went full-on Nazi for the past 4 years. The media have been Nazis to Donald Trump. Nazi propagandists is what the media has become. They're on par with it, right? Lying, the hatred, resist, Antifa, BLM, the Hollywood going off. You have like Democrats now, most Democrats are like, I'll never forgive those Donald Trump voters for what they did to me. And it's like, what'd they do? They didn't vote the same way. So that's an unforgivable sin to the Democrats. Well, their mask fell off. Riots. Irresponsible irresponsible responses to the coronavirus, like keep the borders open and take them in and go to Chinatown and hug somebody. Really bad advice there that would have been exponentially worse. If Joe Biden was in there, he'd have kept the borders with China open, and they would have sent people because they attacked us with that virus. And the Democrats love it because it's just another opportunity. Anything that is bad for Donald Trump will benefit them. Kind of went off on a tangent there. But the mask fell off. The Democrats. And people began to realize that they're monstrous. That they can't hide it, right? And not to the point where they're going to push and push and push with resist, and autonomous zones, and like wacky abortion laws in New York and lockdowns, and going after churches and shutting churches down while allowing riots to go on, shooting Trump supporters, and people getting shot in their riots. People died. To where they're going to obviously, blatantly, out in the open, try to steal a national presidential election so that they can have power, and then really come down, twice as hard with all the authority they can possibly muster and all the money and finances, everything. They're all in. They're going to go all in on never having to leave power again and destroying Americans, killing Americans. Literally killing them. So to the point now where it's like, okay, they need to be stopped. They need to be declared a clear and present danger to the United States, and the people of the United States, a clear and present danger, like enemies of the state, right? And you need to use the military to go unseat these Democrat politicians and try them in a military court. I mean, I would have done that after the governors and mayors, like Cuomo and de Blasio and whoever the woman is up there, and I don't know where you're from. But who's the guy? Ted Wheeler and all this. They all would have been, it would have been martial law, and they'd have been taken out of office because the writing was on the wall there. Like, they shut everybody out. They didn't allow travel from Republican states, like my state, to California anymore. Like, no official business is to be done between the two states anymore because California doesn't like Trump. And it's like, okay, what else are you going to use that as an excuse for? But California says that, well, it could go there if it wanted to, right? Still kind of made, well, we can send people there. We can do what we want. Yeah, the whole thing is, my whole life they played on my compassion, like the Democrat voter. It used to be that the old school Democrats would still make some sense. You could tell that they were probably a little drunk or had too much acid back in the day or something. But they had some points that, like they were anti-war, pro-free speech, what do you call it? Not the media, the news, like reporting. Reporting was their thing, honest reporting, and the elections. They've always kind of been in control of the elections, and we've always had to trust them, to do it properly. Well, all that went out the window, right? That's all gone. And even the Democrats from yesteryear that are still around have completely swallowed the hook, line, and sinker, this new Democrat Party, to where like they're in on it too. And it's like, it's really telling. It's like the logical conclusion to all of those bad ideas that the old school Democrats had that was easy to play with because, like siding with Iran. Oh, yes, we need to empower and enfranchise Iran and shit like that. It's like, no, we don't. You don't know who the Iranians are then, right? Or you do, and you're the enemy. But we can see where that went, right? Because they did that under Obama. They're like, yeah, I guess we will side with Iran. It was like destabilize the entire Middle East again. Jesus, ISIS, a nuclear deal where they're going to get nuclear capability. They're Iran. They can't have nukes. You're going to proliferate nuclear technology to the world's leading sponsor of terrorism? And they're like, yeah, because they think it's funny. They really do. Like, they get together and they laugh about it, even though none of the jokes are funny. It's a validation thing. It's like, they know that they've got it wrong and that they couldn't do it right if they wanted to. So they'll kind of make jokes about the crime that they commit against people. And even though it's not funny, they'll all laugh, so they'll get validation. Kind of thing. So there's that. And I can tell you how I would respond, because I want to be honest here. If I was a poll watcher in like Philadelphia, and I noticed that people were counting ballots numerous times, that nobody was checking any signatures, procedure was not being followed, ballots out of nowhere, telling me to go home while you're still counting, putting up barriers so that pizza boxes and particle boards so that nobody could see in to the counting room where you're in there counting in secret. So you kicked everybody out of there, and then you're going to kick everybody out of the whole building. If that was me, I would have went and exercised my Second Amendment and got a rifle. I would have got as many people as I could, and it would have been on. It really would have. Like, I would have, my intention would be to, get a rifle, get some friends, bribe the cops there. I don't know, if you give them a fucking dirty dollar bill, apparently they'll imprison their grandmother. But, and serve warrants on those election officials and take them to jail. It's just that it'd be my jail, and they'd be in my rules, in my house. So that's how seriously I take it. That's why I've been persecuted by mental health. Another thing about this is it's been really obvious to me for my whole adult life, even before that, my adolescent life. Since then, that the Democrats are no good pieces of shit because of how they treat people. Because I've been through their mental health system about 150 million times. They've locked me up for having done absolutely nothing. It was this routine where it was like, always a Democrat. A Democrat would lie about me and said that I did something I didn't do, said that I was a threat to them, or that I had attacked them, and they call and that I need to go to jail or whatever. He's dangerous. So then the police say, "Oh, great," and they hang up and they're there immediately. And even though that there's prostitution and hand-to-hand drug deals and people with pistols and shit all going on all around the community, they don't care about that. They're not there to enforce the law. They're the Gestapo who have come to validate the lie about me having attacked someone or me being dangerous, when all it was is I was standing up for myself and what was right. Like, no, you tell a Democrat that, no, you can't steal from me, sunshine, right? Well, they're going to do something about it. If they, think that they can, we'll get together and lie on him, and then we'll be able to steal all of his food. And that's what they did. So the police would show up, and they'd see that I was calm. I wasn't attacking anybody. Nobody had any marks. There was no signs of any kind of wrongdoing at all. No crime. Nothing on me. And still they'd be like, yeah, well, just to be safe, we're still going to take you to the mental hospital. And these stays would be anywhere from a week and a half, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. Okay, they'd keep me in there. Meanwhile, I have no idea what's going on, you know, with my apartment or my dog or anything like that, because they didn't care. And when I get into their institutions, the way that they treat me like I'm the piece of shit, you know? It's like I was getting there was one time a few years ago where I went in, they railroaded me into this place. I went to the ER to get my heart checked, and then they wouldn't let me leave and put security on me out of the United Kingdom. It was a G4S security. Why are you using a UK security force? And can't you find a good old, no, because commies. Security on the door, and I ended up, well, you got to see the psychiatrist now. Why? Well, we got to comply. Some bullshit to where like I went in to get my heart checked, and I got to go to the psych center for like 3 weeks now. And when I got in there, there was a patient that they purposely put me with, who had like violent outbursts, and well, he didn't like me. He had me in his sights immediately, and would like faint at me. You know what I mean? Like he was gonna hit me, and then he started like throwing the punch, like right here in my face, to where he'd sneak up behind me and try and like, act like he was gonna punch me, and I'd turn around and I'd see him, and I actually did see, like I turned around and his hand went by. So I'm telling the people this that work there, like this guy is gonna end up getting his shit kicked in because he's gonna sucker punch me, and then I'm gonna stomp his ass, right? Well, they didn't like that out of me. And of course they know that. Well, then the guy escalated and started actually hitting me, soft at first, but still assaulting me, to then harder, right? To where I had this big problem on my hands with an even bigger woman who worked there and was a total bitch. He said, okay. I said, you got to do something about this fucker right now, or I'm going to fuck him up and I'm going to fuck you up too, right? You need to do something now. It's been like 5 days. I'm tired of getting hit by this guy in here. She goes, you need to sit down. Like, sent him to his room, and she sat me down and leaned right into my face, within striking distance of me, with the chin out, the neck exposed like this, and goes, shut your mouth. I don't want to ever hear. I said, what did you say? I said, shut your mouth. I don't ever want to hear anything out of you again. I know who these fucking people really are, So the mask fell off? You think so, asshole? Yeah, it did. So, I guess to change gears, I feel that I've pretty much defeated the mental health system as far as it being able to persecute me for now, until the Democrats get the reins again. God forbid. They'll come at me again. But they did try really hard here. Moved to a new state, and they came after me again. They have me registered as mentally ill in this state now, okay? They did 2 separate court orders for mandatory intensive outpatient treatment that I didn't follow. The first one, the healthcare provider, the psychiatric institution, refused to follow up with me, so that court order went out the window. So then by the time they had a second one, I was like, yeah, I guess, hey, if they don't have to play ball, neither do I. And I didn't. Well, then it was like, okay, you've been off and on and cold turkeyed off of your medication and then overdosed back onto it by a psychiatrist in a lockup, and then with no follow-up, so you run out again, to where it was like, I made a demand on them when they first got me. I said, there's 2 things that I won't tolerate. So one is, do not cut me off of my medication. Don't cold turkey me, because I have like withdrawal symptoms from that. You have no idea. I can die. Like I faint. I have like nosebleeds out of like the top of my brain, like out my nose. I get faint. Okay. I can die. Like I've hit the deck before with a nosebleed. Like this is from that medication. because I can feel it in my brain. I've been overdosed on so much of it. So don't ever do that, and do not come and like just don't fuck with my place, the place where I live. Essentially, don't impose upon me where I live. That's all. And those are the two things. Well, so they immediately started cutting me off my medication. So I went through this with them to where I had to live up to that demand. I said, no, you're gonna, after all the bullshit outpatient, you're gonna give me my medication, right? Because since I'm so mental, don't you think it'd be beneficial, and wouldn't it almost be medical malpractice to cold turkey me and not follow up with anything when, you know, supposedly so crazy? Well, they didn't want to. So I finally got a doctor to, after twisting elbows and, well, geez, it's not pre-authorized, and wanting to change me off the medication. Okay, I got the medication that I wanted, and then prescribing it to me. And then out of nowhere, after like 2 months, they gave me a phone call and said, oh, congratulations, your 2 years of outpatient are up. I said, what are you talking about? I've only been going to you guys for like 2 months. Like, oh, yeah, that too. Oh, you mean that from like 2 years ago? Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, we didn't do that. I'm like, well, you're done with it, and you don't have to come back. So wait a minute. I'm done with it, and I don't have to come back? Well, who's going to give me my medication? I have to be prescribed my meds. And they're like, oh, so you're interested in receiving treatment from us? Like, oh, yeah, because I need my medication. Because they're never going to get rid of me now. You're never getting rid of me. So what I've been doing is, compelling them to do the right thing and actually act like, professionals. But also, I get to slick shots at them now. Because that little shut your mouth thing from that woman is small potatoes compared to some of the cheap shots that they've put me through. To where I've had one therapist who quit early on because I kind of went off on the Democrats about how stupid Democrats are. They've got everything wrong, and I can't stand them. And so she left. She pretended that she had a real reason. So then a second one came up, built up kind of a good rapport with her, but then kind of, dropped the cinder block in the fire, and it blew up about how I hate the Democrats, and, the whole mental health institution is a big joke, and, brought up the whole court orders that are laughable, isn't it? Because neither of us did that. You said you did, but just to cover your own. So, okay, well, she's got to go back to school now and can't be my therapist. So now I've got a new one. I built up a pretty good rapport with her, but I done did it again. And I dropped the hammer on the Democrats, and it's like, they just can't run. They're so incompetent, they can't run anything. And it's not just incompetence, it's malice. Yeah, I can't stand those people, and they're all up in your institution. Well, I don't know. I'm just gonna go through all of them until I get one that's like, which will never happen. Because the thing is, the Democrats believe that being a Democrat qualifies them to do anything. As long as you're a Democrat, then you can go be like a sheriff, or you could be an administrator, or you could be a lawyer, or a doctor, right? So the thing is they've spent the past, I don't know how many, 70, 80, 90, 100 million years getting into these institutions, and then cronyism bringing their people in, right? Who are nothing but Democrats. They're not necessarily there. I mean, they don't perform the job because they don't know how to do most of the jobs that they get. It's just that they're Democrats and they cover each other's asses, right? To where that's what you end up with in these institutions, like these mental health centers, schools, colleges. If you hold Hollywood, if you hold a conservative viewpoint or a contrary viewpoint at all, you're fired. You're pushed out, right? So that's what they've done. And you just end up with this shitty form of politics. Everything is shitty and political, and nothing ever gets done because it's very cowardly. One of the stories that I like to tell is that when I was in the psychiatric center a long time ago, I was in there for quite some time, And I butted. I'm talking. I created an enemy, and I needed one out of those people. They really are the enemy of me. And well, this one guy who worked as like a tech was. I was in the shower, and they had to watch you, and they had to stand outside the door when you're in the shower. So I could hear the guy talking. He's like, I can't stand this place anymore. I can't stand this psychiatry bullshit. I can't stand it. He's like, and the other guy's like, what? He goes, the kid, I can't remember his name. Steve, little Steve, how he stinks, how he started stinking, right? And how it's been like a month, and the therapists and psychiatrists still haven't figured out a way to be able to tell Steve without hurting his feelings that he needs to take a shower. And how this problem is and that's just one of these things about how the kid is living in a filth, like he stinks, and they can't get around to tell him to shower. So he's like, you remember how past couple of days he doesn't stink anymore, right? And I said, well, no, he doesn't, because I went to him. I went against their orders, and I went to the kid directly, and I said, listen, kid, you stink, okay? Your armpits stink. You got to go take a shower. You got to wash your ass. You got to wash your nuts. You got to wash your armpits, okay? You have to go do that and go do it. So the kid finally said, he's like, oh, okay, and went and took a shower. Well, they came down on the guy like a ton of bricks for doing that. Here's this guy coming in at a low level who solves the problem for the kid by being a human being to him and telling the child what he needs to know about how to live life, with these holier-than-thou asshole psychiatrists who've come down on the guy and condemned him for doing it against their orders. You know else I know they're the enemy? I was there for so long. I had a really great relationship with this one nurse. They always said, and they always lauded this relationship that I had with this nurse. And she could talk to me, and I liked and trusted her and everything. Yeah, until the day when I looked at her and I said, I don't want to take this medication tonight. She says, no, you got to take it. I said, no. As soon as I said no, they hit the alarm. The big, NFL, offensive lineman came in and slammed me. And I was just standing there. All I said was no. And the whole place went nuts. And they came in and slammed me and threw me in a padded cell where I got so pissed. I was so pissed in there. I was saying, I'm the craziest guy who's ever been in this place. I'm so much crazier than everyone else who's ever been here. And this is a big center. And I'm nuts. And I can do anything that I want, or maybe not. I kind of lost my shit, right? Until I finally got tired. And there was a guy named Victor Coangelo who said that he was a Korean War vet. This guy's a piece of shit. He came in after I'd calmed down and everything, and he says, stand up. And he grabbed hold of me, and I didn't resist then either, and he tried to do a hip throw, right? Like an ogoshi. It's like a hip throw. But I didn't resist him, and I just kind of fell, right? I just, what the hell are you doing coming in here? Waking me up when I'm sleeping on the floor in this padded room. They had me in a straitjacket for a while. They ended up putting me in 5-point restraints. But before they did that, see, Victor Coangelo came in, and then he had me in a chokehold, right? And he was choking me. And he said, did you see how I did that? Did you see how I did that hip throw? That was a perfectly executed hip throw. Do you see how you shouldn't mess with people? And I said, I let you throw me. He says, no, you didn't. It was a perfectly executed hip throw. I'm like, no, it wasn't. No, I let you do that. I didn't resist. Couldn't you tell? No, and we're going to sit here and I'm going to choke you until you admit that it was a perfectly executed hip throw. And I finally said, after a half an hour, 40 minutes of being choked by this guy, I said, okay, yeah, whatever. It's a perfectly executed hip throw. And he got off. And then he looked at me before he left and he said, I broke you. I said, no, you didn't. You know what I mean? Now here's a guy who says that he was in the Korean War. Do you know what the Korean War was like? It was brutal. Okay, bad. Um, to where he's the kind of guy who's supposedly a combat vet from Korea who would have seen the kind of action that would humble the man, right? But he gets off on coming in and you know, demanding that I say that his hip throw was perfectly executed, even though it wasn't, in order for him to stop choking me, okay, to where he legitimately believed that he performed a perfectly executed, like 5-point throw on me. It's no, no. And, Victor Coangelo is lucky that I don't know who his family is because, I might go and just give his son or grandkid, give him a good old, Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan right to the leg, and that motherfucker will never skate again. I might come up and execute a perfectly executed choke slam or, like head crush on one of those folks and then choke them until they admit that Victor Coangelo, their father or grandfather, was actually not in the Korean War and he was a coward who draft dodged and only wore the hat. So if you get where I'm coming from with why I hate the Democrats, will never trust them, you start to see why. Maybe you haven't seen is how I beat them. I'm beating them like pretty solidly. And that feels good because after so long of taking so much shit, I unleashed on them. Yeah. Before I moved, I unleashed on them. And I proved that once I was the learner, but now I'm the master. So this is my video. Democrats are a clear and present danger to the United States of America, and Donald Trump needs to declare martial law and put them all in military prison. And all the average Joe Democrats can fuck right off. Yeah, if you voted for Joe Biden, you're lucky I don't beat the shit out of you. You're lucky I don't fuck with your sign that you've got in your fucking lawn. Still, even for like somebody that lost, oh yeah, keep that sign up there. The guy lost. Well, you want to know, see, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, said that when they get control of the House and the Senate and the presidency, they're going to overhaul the whole thing and change the laws wherever they want, whenever they want, so that they'll never have to leave power again. Well, you want to know how I know they stole the election? Because they showed their hand right there. Was it Jim Clyburn? This is our opportunity to remake the country in our image. And I know better than Donald Trump and all this stuff, okay? Well, the House of Representatives election was over like immediately. I'm not quite sure how the hell the time frame was supposed to go down, but even like before everybody else voted for, okay, the state's got to work. The House of Representatives, the Democrats took a lot of damage. They lost a lot of seats. And that would have been the pattern in this election if the Democrats hadn't have paused the election and started with their ballot fraud, okay, counting multiple ballots, kicking people out, not allowing observation, no signature matches on absentee, no anything, no records to back any of it up. To where put it on pause and only going to count votes for Joe Biden exclusively for like 4 days straight until they get everything that AOC wanted, almost, except for the House of Representatives, which was locked out to them. This is like it went from a complete landslide for the Donald Trump and his populist, whatever, conservative party, into the biggest fraud I've ever seen committed by the Democrats out in the open. Um, and if you don't do something about it, it's unfair to do to people like me. If I was just to say anything to Donald Trump, I'd say, you got to declare martial law, declare these people enemies of the state. I don't care if you got to use the damn Marines and the Navy and the Air Force and the Army and Space Force and the Coast Guard. I don't care if you got to use a nuclear bomb, because you can't put that kind of shit on me. You can't put on me what they're trying to fit me into, because that's bullshit. I'll fight back and you know it. Except I won't have any real effect because I'm one guy and, and they're just waiting to push me. They want to push. They want to push harder. So there it is. And the thing about me is I'm outspoken. Like in my living room, I speak out loud, and everybody can hear me. The thing is that everybody pretends that they don't hear me, which I find kind of strange. If I had a neighbor who had a lot on his mind, maybe 2 or 3 times a month, and would work it all out with himself, I'd go talk to him. I'd be like, "Hey, are you all right?" Or, "Hey, what's up with your politics there? Geez, I know everything about you." Like, "What's that? I couldn't hear you." And that seems to be a pattern. It's kind of like a blind eye to a lot of things. Like the cops would wade through a cascading series of drug deals and tricks that are being turned right in front of them in rapid succession with like everything they need, plain sight, walk past all of that with a blind eye to get to me, to take me to the hospital because they care so much about me. It's like, what's up with the big blind eye? Nobody seems to know. And everyone says, "Oh, well, that's the excuse that they use to say that I'm mentally ill." They'll say, "See, he's talking to himself. He's erratic." They'll start making things up. He's talking about getting a rifle and doing something about the elections and misrepresent what I said. But the thing is, I don't give a shit. I know that if they could, they would. And they're just waiting. But that's how shit gets started. Just like that. Because after you get taken away like that, and not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times, we're talking like 50, 60, 70 times. I've been taken away like that. Now, admittedly, about 20% of the time, I probably deserved it, and was a little over the top. But after you get done dirty like that enough times, and you go through the bullshit in their institutions when they have you where they want you, it kind of becomes like a real thorn in your side, and something that you want payback for, And me saying that kind of thing, like, yeah, I want payback on the mental health industry and those institutions, okay? I want all the people fired out of those institutions, okay? I want them blacklisted so they can't ever work for the government again. No county outreach, mental health, Medicare fraud bullshit anymore for these people. We need to turn those huge buildings and institutions that they have with basements and basketball courts and pools for like I don't know, maybe 50 patients and open that up to the whole community. And you could do all sorts of recreation activities out of there that they won't do. They won't do that. The only reason they have all of these, they're miniature prisons. That's all they are. They don't benefit the community at all. Because look at my case. Okay, whether let's say you really did need some mental health, and you go in there and you go in there voluntarily, you realize that they're full of shit, you try to leave, they switch you over to involuntary and say you need another, what do you call it, psych evaluation. Okay, so now you can't leave, and they got you stuck in there, and they treat you like shit, and then they say they get you to sign all sorts of paperwork that they don't want you to read. They come around like 2-3 weeks later after your life has been, essentially ruined, where you have to pick up the pieces again, and they'll say, yeah, so you wanted some mental health counseling. Well, now you can get 2 years of mandatory outpatient treatment because you're mentally ill and registered with the state now, and because you admitted it. You admitted you had a problem. It's the first step. And so here's your ticket to go get denied when you show up to your county mental health care Medicare paid provider. They'll deny you. They'll deny the court order. And you won't get treatment or the meds that we've overdosed you on for like a month now. We're just going to up the dosage every day until you get up to a therapeutic dose. It's like, fuck you. You're poisoning me. But I'll eat them because I don't give a shit anymore. It's either on or off, and they want on. They swore up and down on, so it's on. To not receive any follow-up care. If I wasn't such a stubborn son of a bitch who really doesn't give a fuck anymore about any of the stupid games, I probably would have hauled off and hung myself or something. You know what I mean? I mean, that kind of disappointing letdown. You show up because you legitimately need some help, let's say, and it's the biggest mistake. I mean, when I looked at the court order, and it was ex parte, and it's like been filed through the probate court, which is the marriage court, that does not have a mental health, what do you call it, apparatus or appendage of their organ. They don't have that. It's like a completely baseless ruling. And it really is. Because not only did I say no the second time, the health they said no too. So the court could not lawfully do that, and I've proven it. So we'll see how it goes. But I know I'm not going away. I know that people don't like me, It's like I have a neighbor he's a cool guy, and he has a girlfriend, and I still think that she's pretty cool. I like her. I think she's a genuinely nice person. But on Thanksgiving, I went over there and I saw him, and I said, Happy Thanksgiving to my neighbor, and his girlfriend blew up on me and was like, it's a colonialist, racist, genocidal, imperialistic, slave-owning tradition. Kind of like painted me as like a supporter of like genocide, slavery, colonialism, imperialism, racism, like all in the same breath. And it's like the progressive that is in there. It's like, why do you folks do that? Why do you throw out these huge distractions that are supposedly they're born from problems and tragedies and misdeeds in the past that cannot be undone? You summon up history from like hundreds of years ago to condemn me today and a holiday. It's like, what a big distraction from what it's supposed to be about. Because the British and the Indians did get together in like 1641 for 3 days of thanks. And there is kind of, so they tried at least. to where you're missing the point. You know, you're missing the point about Thanksgiving. It's not about. Uh, it's about getting together with your friends and family or neighbors or whoever and cooking some food and eating and saying thank you and having a good go of it, right? Not arguing, that kind of thing. To where what's wrong with that idea, right? Oh, well, it's based in. No, it's not. It's only based in that if you believe that it's based in that. I don't. I believe that it should be a day where you get to maybe you get to know a new neighbor. Hey, if you don't have any family to be around, like I didn't have any family this Thanksgiving, I'll probably see him at Christmas, but because of circumstances, um, I didn't have family to go to for Thanksgiving, so I went to the neighbor. I actually ate two Thanksgiving dinners, and I had a great Thanksgiving. And that's what it's about to me. But the attack of like a thing that I don't understand about that philosophy, that idea, is like the progressive will come at it with like an attack, kind of almost like a personal slur against you, insinuating that you stand for slavery and genocide, while still maintaining the moral high ground for themselves. And I'm thinking to myself, hey, weren't we both born in the same country, kind of in the same era? So if I'm guilty of genocide and racism and colonialism and slavery because I just happen to be who I am at this time, then aren't you also guilty for those same reasons? Well, no, they don't feel that they are guilty. It's like, well, that's a huge double standard, you know. It's it's kind of like racist holiday. It's like, racism to me is a lot like unions. Unions exist to mediate grievances between management and employers. Okay, like back in the Industrial Revolution, they had people working in factories that were dying from the conditions. They get crunched up in a machine. They get like tuberculosis working in a cellar. If you ever read Upton Sinclair, The Jungle, you'll know what I'm talking about. People went to work and they died within a year, shortly thereafter, to where you had to do something about it. So the workers organized and created unions and made demands for safer work environments on the management, on the ownership. And they did that, right? But then the unions kind of stuck around. And they still want to portray, like unions still seemingly want to portray any American industry as like, something out of the jungle from Upton Sinclair, and it's not. And they kind of exist like, what do they exist for? Better protections, better pay. No, they exist to perpetuate their business because the unions have become a business model that the Democrats use essentially, to where they inject themselves in between management and employees. And even if there's no problem, if everything's fine, then why the hell would you need the union to exist? To the point where it got to the point where you couldn't work in the auto industry unless you were with the union. Like you had to also pay the union, even though there was really nothing to complain to. It's like you got a job, everything's going pretty well, But I don't have a problem with management. Why the hell would I give up some of my check to somebody who's not even part of the fucking crew really, and has some office somewhere? Well, that's why we did right to work states. Like Florida is a right to work state, to where you don't have to join the union if you don't want to. See, they took your choice away. They took your ability to say no away because they're communists. Now, it's a lot like racism because, the Civil War happened. Okay, we fought a civil war and ended slavery as the institution that it was in this country. Okay? I don't know how many other countries have done that, probably, but not many. If there was slavery around in a country, it's still around over there, wherever it is, but not here. Okay? And if you remember in the 90s, when Bill Clinton was the president, it was like race relations were really good. It seemed like the blacks and the whites and the Hispanics and everybody were kind of getting along, mainly the blacks and the whites. It was like, okay. But then, something changed to where they came around. It's just like a union will come around to the employees and say, you're not getting paid enough. So and so gets paid more than you, and they only do a slightly different job. We should organize. Maybe we should even go on strike because you need better health care, don't you? And wouldn't you want that? And we should organize demands and make demands on management for more stuff for us, more insurance and more money, more benefits. And if they don't give us what we want, we'll strike, right? It's like, where did that come from? The unions, because they need to validate their existence, so they create a problem. And this is the same kind of thing with racism. Like, there's a lot of institutions that represent black folks. Let's look at, you got the NAACP, you got like the Black Caucuses, you got affirmative action. You have all these institutions that have arisen to like fight discrimination and racism. To where back in the 60s and stuff, it was like, yeah, okay, I get it. But to where into the 90s and into the 2000s, it was like they kind of came back around like the unions and said, like they really ain't getting along. They really don't care. Like, we're in this, like we're all white, or we're the blacks, and we gotta do this. And they've been disenfranchising us, and it's their fault. And we should really bring a case against it, or a suit or something. Or we should do something about this, don't you think? It's like, no, not really. The whole point of this country is like, racism is not illegal. Okay? It doesn't mean that you should be a racist, but it's not illegal. Okay? Number one. I don't even know. But I feel like these institutions are just, they have this business model that relies on racism to exist. The unions rely on, problems with management to exist, right? If racism went away, how much would you really need some of these institutions? Like, if there's no problem between management and employers, why do you really need the union? And the excuses I hear is like, everything's racist. Everything's racist. It's like, no, it's not. This country was like, we figured it out. Okay, you can do what you want to do as long as you don't interfere with the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of others. As long as you don't break the law. Okay, you can be who you want to be. If you want to be a black supremacist, I guess you can. In my country, you can be a black supremacist. You can be an Asian supremacist, if you really wanted. Okay, you can worship Satan in my country if you want to, and I'm not going to stop you for that. I'm not going to behead you. Okay, I'll tell you it's a bad idea, but you're free to do that, right? Now, you're also free not to. Okay. Now the difference is like, when I was a kid, I was like, why is racism wrong? This is my dad telling me this. It's not the school. It was, well, okay. I had a problem with a black guy. I was a kid, and a black guy had like verbally assaulted me when I went up and said hello to him. He like looked down at me and was like, hey, all pissed off because he was a racist. That's how I took it, right? And so racism came up, and it was like, well, he doesn't like white people. And it's essentially because he was, he's calling you a cracker and all this, and you're a little kid, and it was really inappropriate to do at the supermarket or wherever. So we got into the conversation, and it's like, well, how did you feel when that guy did that to you? I said, well, I don't like him. And he's like, exactly, you don't like him, right? But what about other black people? I said, and I said, I was honest. I said, I don't know how to feel about them. I'm not sure I like them now. And my dad said, well, see, that's where you're wrong. Because you look at it from everyone as an individual, right? Individuals can be good or bad. Most people, most black people, most Hispanic people, most white people are good people, okay? You don't have to worry about them like you do with that guy. But there's a small amount of people who are not good people. And those are you blame those individuals for what they do and not their entire racial group. Okay? You have to treat people on an individual basis. It's like, okay, well, what does the left say? The left says, no, it's a group identity, and everybody's in the same group. And, to disrespect one is to disrespect all or something like that. It's like, no, that's not true. And what they've done is they've found, like, they'll find a minority, like a minority within a minority, like the transsexuals, okay, who are like a minority within the homosexual community, okay, and they will use them as a group to try to bend, like, if it's 0.5% of people in the society overall are transsexuals, then the Democrats will come along and say, hey, aren't you kind of disempowered, and isn't it kind of like homophobic against you and all this other stuff, and then try to bend 95.5% of the rest of the population into conforming with the tyranny of this minority, right? With this group, instead of looking at people from an individual perspective, they look at everyone from the group perspective, and that's why they've misunderstood things like racism and how to deal with it. That's what I think. Because nobody wants to talk about race. It's like, and we did that back in the 90s. It was a big thing, like, we need to have a conversation. So you have a conversation, and after a while, you kind of realize, like, like, why are we discussing this? Like, it's almost like, as long as we don't, they say that silence is violence. I think it's kind of like don't ask, don't tell. Like, believe what you're going to believe, do what you're going to do, as long as it doesn't interfere, as long as you're not violating other people's rights or breaking the law. What the hell can I possibly do about it? Me coming along and condemning you for being a racist, even though you might not be in it. Milk is racist now. And it's like, I'm not getting on that ship with you guys. I'd rather be able to coexist and get along with my neighbors and my community. I'm a son of a bitch in my house because I won't shut up half the time. But I'd like to be able to not have to go through the whole who's racist and who's not and why and how. I don't do that with people, okay? I try to treat people on an individual basis, give people a clean slate as much as I can, and just get along with my life. So we've done racism too. But now racism has been weaponized. And it's like, well, this is going to become a racial issue. And it's like, why? It has nothing to do with it. Well, if you're the Democrats, you're going to go along to, to go up treating as if being born with a certain skin color is like an achievement. You know what I mean? It's like, and this is from, it's a white perspective. Oh, well, God forbid. Because I see these white Democrats really kind of go into the black community and telling them that they deserve things because they're black. as if they had anything to do with choosing to be black, as if it's like some kind of like litmus test, like, oh, well, you were born black, so therefore you're racism is going on and this and that. And it's kind of like you want to come along and you want to tap the liberal on the shoulder and you want to say, what are you feeding this person? Why are you coming along with this idea that like, well, you want a job? Well, I can get you a job because of your skin color. It's like, why don't you give the guy a job that he's good at, you know, that he like would excel at, instead of just giving him a job somewhere through an affirmative action program just because of their skin color. You know, like, aren't you kind of aren't you kind of treating them like isn't that racist? Isn't that racist? You know what I mean? To come along and say like, because of your skin color, you're entitled to this, this, and this. It's like, no, you have to earn it. You should earn it, right? And I wonder, you know, when you look at Democrat cities where you have some violence going on there, like those riots and shit, that was nuts. It's like BLM ended up being responsible for shooting a couple of kids, burning down Wendy's, like looting Target, destroying everything. And because a guy got shot by the police. And I looked at one of those shootings, and it's like a guy was like drunk or under the influence, he was drunk, and he pulled into a Wendy's and he fell asleep behind the wheel in line, and another person was honking. Somebody called the police on him. And when the police showed up, he became combative with them, stole the policeman's taser, and as he was running away, he pointed the taser at the police officer and tried to shoot him with the taser, to where the cop had his gun out and shot the guy. And it's like, don't you know that if you deal with the police like that, they're gonna use force against you? Like, that's the whole deal. Everybody should know that by now, you know. And everybody makes mistakes, but some mistakes you can't take back. And that guy making that mistake like that, you know, I mean, what are you gonna do? He's running away he's trying to shoot a cop with a taser, you know. What if he'd have tased the cop and gotten the cop's firearm? Then what the hell would happen, right? Then he'd have a gun in the situation. So don't come to me with this unreasonable shit. Okay, if you're reasonable, because you got to be careful what you label people. I mean, I've been labeled everything under the book, and I learned to kind of be able to wear it. If I'm going to be accused of it anyway, I may as well look into it and have a little bit of an argument for you. When it comes to like, well, I'm a racist for these things. Well, no, and here's why, you know. And if you don't want to hear that, and you're going to attack me, well, then you have a problem, right? You're the problem, and you're going to force my hand to fuck you up. It's kind of how it is. And that can't happen. You know, it can be, and it has been, that this guy right here has fucked some people up in his day for bringing plates of bullshit to him to eat when he doesn't want to eat it. What are you doing in my living room with a plate of bullshit trying to feed me? Get the fuck out of here. They say no and they're unreasonable. You're leaving one way or the other, pal. Maybe we're both leaving in body bags. So, I enjoy my life. I've carved out a little niche here in America, where I've got it pretty good. Still the land of opportunity. And I only have upwards mobility. Uh, I really don't have shit. But I've got my needs met. And that's good enough for me. And that's what everybody should be concerned with. Is taking care of themselves instead of what somebody else is doing, more or less. Build yourself up. Find your own niche. Because don't forget now, the same kind of, BLM was responsible for all those, was it in Detroit? I can't remember. It was right at the tail end of Obama's administration where that guy went on a shooting spree and sniped, I don't know how many police officers there, and killed them. So the whole thing about it's way past time to meet force with these people and to meet their crime with the law at every step and keep pace with them and outpace them. I don't know what else to tell you. And you're going to have sons of bitches who are white, black, Hispanic, Asian, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh. And I don't know. I still think that's going to happen. I still think that America got it right. And the negative elements, the minority of negative elements that have been empowered and don't do any good, it's really a minority of people. And most of the people that I meet, that I interact with on a daily basis, don't have these problems. It seem to be able to get along. So there you go. There's my video. It's probably an hour long. I don't care. But I got it all out there. Then there's more, but I gotta go. I get cleaned up.